Welcome back, folks. Have you ever thought, I have the worst landlord ever? Well, grab your popcorn because today's r/ProRevenge story is about to make your landlord look like an absolute angel. We've got an ex-con turned Sherlock Holmes taking on a landlord who's colder than a landlord without a working heater. Spoiler alert, it gets toasty. I won't give up till you are no longer a landlord. Posted by Lily's daddy. Warning, this is a lengthy read, but the comments suggest it might be worth your time. Regrettably, I moved into an apartment managed by, in my opinion, the worst landlord ever. I'll refer to this man as entitled Dick, or ED. Despite his behavior, ED had the audacity to declare himself a good person in court. To provide some context, I moved into this apartment shortly after being released from prison, delighted that someone was willing to give me a chance to turn my life around. However, this optimism was quickly proven misguided. Everything was fine for the initial few months, but then winter arrived and the heating failed. It took 3 days for ED to even answer his phone, which was already inundated with complaints from his freezing tenants. He claimed the law afforded him a reasonable time to repair the issue. We spent 2 more weeks without heat, using our stoves for warmth and effectively camping in our kitchens. When ED received his electricity bill, he attempted to raise the rent. After the city refused his request, he reacted by not paying his electricity bill, leaving us without any heat. Driven by my obsessive-compulsive disorder, I delved into extensive research. I scrutinized every federal, state, and city law related to landlord-tenant rights and discovered numerous violations, which was more frightening than humorous. I also examined the building codes and the condition of all of ED's apartments, since I was either friends with his tenants or had visited their apartments for repairs resulting from frozen pipes and failed electrical outlets. I had ample opportunity to inspect the apartments. Eventually, ED's behavior frustrated all of his tenants who wanted to testify against him in court, but were hindered by the financial hardships resulting from the living conditions. On January 2nd, around 2 a.m., I was awoken by the building's smoke detectors. There was no smoke in my apartment yet, but as I was on the top floor, I rushed to the back hall. Upon opening the door, I was greeted by a thick wall of smoke. I swiftly ran downstairs, urging my then-girlfriend to evacuate quickly. I knocked on every door and screamed, "Fire!" encouraging as many people as possible to evacuate. No one was responding on the floor with the fire, which I knew housed children, so panic set in. Thankfully, the fire department had arrived and began breaking down doors. After the fire was extinguished and the investigation started, I witnessed ED giving the tenant of the affected apartment's sister an envelope filled with cash. 2 weeks later, the investigation concluded with a verdict of arson. The tenant had used hairspray to start the fire and hidden the evidence in a hole she had punched into the wall. It turned out she was the only tenant who had paid rent in the entire building since she had moved in just 2 days before. I was not aware of her tenancy. Her sister and kids had moved out the day before. Upon discovering this, I confronted ED, vowing to ensure he lost all his properties. Next, I began gathering stories from his tenants about their interactions with ED. The accusations ranged from employee exploitation and theft to grand theft, auto, and bank fraud. With a new plan in mind, I presented myself as a computer technician to ED, who had several broken computers and networking issues. We negotiated a deal for back rent payment. Although I knew he was unlikely to uphold his word, it was all part of the plan. After gaining access to his passwords and logins, I copied his entire hard drive to my portable one. I copied all emails from his business account and printed his financial records on my Wi-Fi printer next door. After fixing his computers and network, I went home to review the evidence I had obtained. It was more than enough. I contacted code enforcement and reported all code violations for each building, including the illegal electrical installation in ED's new office. An immediate investigation was launched. Soon after, I found a 7-day notice to quit on my door. I reassured my worried roommate, citing the Warranty of Habitability Act in court and successfully thwarting the eviction. ED was required to repair my apartment immediately, with me still in it. The following month, I was given another eviction notice. Still, ED was hemorrhaging money as I was teaching his tenants their rights and associated laws. ED repeatedly lost his court dates, was constantly ordered to fix things, and continuously fined by the courts and code enforcement. He was on a downward spiral. Regarding the fire, The tenant living in the affected apartment was arrested for arson and charged with 2 counts after the initial accidental electrical fire on New Year's Day was determined to be intentional. ED was also under investigation for conspiracy to commit arson, among other charges. Yet, I wasn't finished. We went to court again for my non-payment of rent. I won once more, based on the Landlord Retaliation Act. I was able to prove blatant retaliation, and the judge dismissed ED's case. Unsurprisingly, enduring a winter without heat took a toll on all the tenants. We bought electric heaters and informed the power company that ED had disconnected power to all his buildings, forcing the tenants to pay for their own electricity. His illegal wiring practices had caught up to him. The apartments were wired to run off each other, and the common areas were now connected to every apartment's wiring. Local law mandated that the landlord provide power to all common areas. This put ED in a precarious situation since his shoddy workmanship and illegal wiring prevented him from legally disconnecting the power. The power company reconnected all the power and blocked his ability to shut it off until the common area's wiring was repaired and separated from the apartments. This was an expense running into the thousands money we knew he didn't have. ED was in a state of panic. He consistently lost in court, tenants legally withheld rent, he was unable to shut off services, and the fines were mounting. Despite all this, he refused to make repairs, consistently blaming his tenants. One by one, the buildings were condemned and ED was required to pay for the relocation of his tenants, a responsibility he shirked. His inability to do so culminated in his arrest for attempting to sell 3 buildings that had been seized by the city and for selling a condemned building. ED got his comeuppance. He lost all his properties, was charged with numerous cases of fraud, and was investigated for other crimes about which I am still in the dark. But I hadn't finished yet. The suffering he had caused necessitated more action. I submitted his financial records, internal memos, and other documents from his computers to the IRS, local authorities, and code enforcement. ED was in deep trouble. Since then, I have moved into a new apartment. All of ED's properties have been seized by the city, state, and IRS. I haven't seen ED in 3 years. All his properties have been purchased by a new owner, repaired, and occupied by new tenants who are content with their landlord. The old tenants have found better accommodations with decent landlords. As for our infamous entitled Dick, he's serving multiple sentences for his crimes, with more investigations underway and charges still rolling in. ED must surely be regretting his encounter with this particular tenant in some prison. The moral of the story? Don't be an ED unless you're prepared to face a moral enforcer. Okay, where do we start unpacking this one, folks? I mean, first off, let's all tip our hats to our very own tenant/detective. Who knew a deep dive into tenant law could be more riveting than the latest Netflix crime doc? Now, our entitled Dick, he's like the supervillain in every bad rom-com, right? Only instead of not getting the girl, he's freezing out his tenants and making more shady deals than a black market watch seller. And the audacity to call himself a good person? I've seen more integrity in a leaky faucet. And the fire incident, man, I thought my 2 a.m. wake-up calls were bad. Fire is definitely not the wake-up text you want, folks. But let's talk about our star tenant, the Sherlock of tenant rights. He wasn't just playing 4D chess. This guy was playing interdimensional chess with quantum physics rules. The moment he pulled out the back rent payment trick, I almost spit out my coffee. I mean, who knew landlord-tenant disputes could be more exciting than a heist movie? And then, the takedown. Now, I'm not one to revel in another's misfortune, but seeing ED squirm like a worm on a hook, that was more satisfying than cracking open a cold one after a long day. But really, all sarcasm aside, hats off to our tenant hero for standing up to ED and not just defending his own rights, but those of his fellow tenants as well. Truly a victory for the little guy. But let me leave you with this thought, guys. Be nice to your tenants, landlords. You never know when you might cross paths with a tech-savvy ex-con who knows their way around tenant law. Remember, not all heroes wear capes. Some wear the guise of the underdog with a knack for networking issues. Until next time, stay frosty, my friends. Hey, wait. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know what you would have done if you were in this situation down in the comments below. Anyways, stay safe out there in that crazy world. Much love. Peace.